Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Nama saya Ahmad Amin bin Abdul Latif, nombor menteri I182031446. Saya akan membentangkan chapter 9 bersama rakan-rakan saya, iaitu Muhammad Rushaidi bin Abdul Rahman, Nur Syafinas binti Abdul Razak, Nur Afrina Hanani binti Nur Afzani dan Nur Syakina binti Cahaya Anwar. Dan kami akan membentangkan chapter 9, iaitu Organizational Development dan juga Sense Making. So saya akan memulakan presentation, iaitu saya akan memulakan bahagian saya di mana saya akan menyentuhkan beberapa perkara, iaitu 3 perkara. Yang pertama ialah apa itu organizational development dan juga apa itu sense making, dan yang terakhir saya akan sentuh iaitu image of managing change, approach and juga focus dia. So kita akan sentuh 3 benda tu. So tanpa buang masa, kita akan pergi satu persatu. So organizational development is a critical and science-based process that helps organization build their capacity to change and achieve a greater effectiveness, developing, improving and reinforcing strategies, structure and process. So maksud dia adalah satu proses yang berasaskan sains di mana membantu sesebuah organisasi untuk membina keupayaan untuk berubah bagi mencapai keberkesanan yang lebih besar, iaitu dengan mengembangkan, memperbaiki dan memperkuatkan strategi, struktur dan juga proses, di mana maksud dia adalah ini adalah satu proses yang berkait satu proses dan perubahan yang berasaskan saintifik, di mana contoh sebuah kilang ingin membuat perubahan dari segi dia punya teknologi, di mana dia perlu mengubah dari segi memperbaiki, menambah baik dan juga mengubah strategi dari segi struktur dan juga proses dalaman. So itu adalah dari segi saintifik lah. Itu adalah organisation development. So seterusnya kita pergi kepada apa itu making sense. So seterusnya adalah making sense. Making sense approach ni adalah a social process of meaning construction and reconstruction through which managers understand, interpret and create sense for themselves and others of their changing organizational context and the surroundings. So maksud dia adalah sebuah proses di mana untuk sudah faham, ialah sebuah proses di mana pendekatan yang dilakukan oleh manager, di mana manager akan cuba memahami situasi tersebut supaya dia dapat membantu orang lain untuk memahami juga situasi tersebut terhadap perubahan dan menjadikan perubahan itu positif dan lebih keberkesanannya. So itu adalah pendekatan approach yang dibuat dari segi sense making. So kita pergi seterusnya, perkara yang terakhir iaitu dalam permainan saya ini, terakhir iaitu images of managing change, approach and focus dia. So apa image dia, apa approach dia, apa dia punya fokus. So kita ada 4 yang saya nak sentuh, iaitu yang pertama iaitu coach. Images dia coach. So apa approach yang dia buat oleh coach ni? Approach yang dia buat adalah dia menggunakan approach organizational development, apprentice inquiry, positive organizational scholarship. So ini 3 approach yang dilakukan oleh coach bagi apabila dia melakukan pendekatan sesuatu pendekatan. So ini adalah 3 approach yang dilakukan. So apa dia fokus coach ni? Fokus coach ni adalah broadly based on assumption about the importance of humanistic values, democratic values and juga dia punya development values. So maksudnya coach ni dia punya fokus adalah secara meluas berdasarkan aspek-aspek, iaitu berdasarkan dia punya nilai-nilai humanistik dan juga nilai-nilai perkembangan itu sendiri. Itu cara pendekatan yang fokus oleh coach ni. So kita pergi kepada seterusnya ialah interpreter. So interpreter, image dia, interpreter, apakah approach dia? Adalah dialogic, OD dan juga sense making. So ini adalah interpreter punya dia punya approach lah. So apa fokus interpreter ni? Fokus interpreter ni, dia punya ciri-ciri dia, fokus dia adalah the significance of the meanings that people attribute to action, how these meanings influence people's behaviors and how managers of change can take this into account. So maksudnya managers yang menggunakan pendekatan ini adalah di mana dia berciri-cirikan di mana dia ingin membina satu makna apabila dia melakukan pendekatan, di mana dia ingin memahami, memberi makna. Maksud cara dia akan bagi orang merasai benda tu. So dia akan tindakan dia memberi makna dalam dan melibatkan sense making di situ. So itu adalah cara fokus interpreter. So itu untuk interpreter. Seterusnya kita pergi kepada yang ketiga, iaitu director. So bagi images untuk director, dia punya approach dia punya pendekatan dia adalah change management dan juga contingency. So dia menggunakan dua pendekatan ini, iaitu change management dan juga contingency. Dan dia punya fokus oleh director ni adalah focus on strategic and plan organizational change. Intention change outcomes are tracked as achievable through a series of planned steps. So maksudnya director ni dia apabila dia melakukan pendekatan, fokus dia adalah secara dia punya ciri-cirinya adalah dia membuat secara tersusun. Maksudnya apabila dia melakukan pendekatan, dia akan plan secara tersusun dan juga strategi. Maksudnya dia ada langkah-langkah step by step dia. So itu adalah pendekatan yang digunakan oleh manager yang menggunakan pendekatan director ni. So itu adalah untuk images director, bagaimana dia punya approach dan juga fokus. So dan yang terakhir adalah navigator. Jadi bagi navigator adalah di mana navigator dia akan menggunakan approach secara processual, processual dan juga fokus ataupun ciri-ciri bagi navigator ni ialah tracks outcomes as the result of the complex interplay of the different interests, both internal and external to the organisation. Maksudnya dia akan navigator ni macam dia akan guide, maksudnya dia akan control maksud dia punya pendekatan tu dia akan control. Apabila dia melakukan pendekatan, dia akan control, maksudnya dia akan guide lah supaya dia tidak melampaui apa yang dijangka. Maksudnya dia nak secara dia punya tindakan tu mengikut apa yang dia nak. So dia akan control benda tu. So itu adalah cara yang navigator gunakan, pendekatan yang navigator gunakan. So itu adalah part yang saya sentuh bagi images yang ada untuk bab saya ni. So itu saja dari saya setakat ini. Saya akan teruskan dengan presenter seterusnya. Sekian, terima kasih.
Hi and Assalamualaikum. My name is Nur Afrina Hanani binti Nur Afzani, metric number I18203183. So I will explain to you guys about organization development. So basically, what is organization development? So organization development is the study and implementation of practice, systems and technique that affect organizational change. The goal is to modify groups, organization, performance, or culture. The organizational changes are typically initiated by the group's stakeholder. So, organization development function is to create the following attributes through effective facilitation, working with an individual, a group, or an organization. Under organization development, there's 3 elements in organization development, which is the first one is traditional approach, the second one is the OD practitioner, and the last one is criticism of OD. So I will explain one by one about the 3 elements under organization development. So the first one is traditional OD approach. Traditional OD approach sees an organization mission, vision and values as acting as a foundation to its strategies, decisions and actions. Beckett depicts the classic OD approach as one that has the following characteristic. So basically, under traditional OD approach, there's 9 characteristics. So I will explain one by one about the characteristic. So the first one, we go, plan whole system focus. So plan whole system focus is a plan that involves a systematic diagnosis of the whole organizational system, a plan for its improvement and provision of adequate resources. So this is where a good conversation through generative question begins to just explore the current state of the organization and to just explore what will make a positive difference? Okay, move to the next one is top management involved. Top management involved is which means all of the person on the top of management play a big role or influence at all levels throughout the organization to make a change or differences in the organization. The next one is aims to improve effectiveness, which means to identify the job's true purpose and define what the organization needs to achieve and perform a job analysis. This one will help the organization uncover the most important objectives so that they can start prioritizing tasks effectively and achieve the mission. The next one is long term. Long term is when the organization develops a plan on how to improve the company to be better. So it will take 2 or 3 years to achieve the effective change. The next one is action-oriented. Action-oriented is the process where they further develop the initial process, design draft, and create specific steps to take along the development process. The next one is changing attitudes and behavior. Basically, changing attitude and behavior is a different levels to form an integrated approach to developing the organization. The next one is experiential-based learning. It is a training approach that yields typical retention rates of 80 to 90% because the experience is clearly linked to the task that organisation must perform in the workplace. So maksudnya dekat sini bila kita train orang untuk buat sesuatu kerja, automatically pekerja tu akan faham sepanjang proses yang dia pelajari. So bila kita letak dia dekat sesuatu jabatan, dia dah tahu macam mana nak buat kerja tu sebab dia dah ada experience sebelum ni yang dia belajar. And then the next one is groups and teams. Groups and teams ni the form of the key focus for change. So each team or group has a specific purpose that it delivers on, has shared leadership roles, and has both individual and mutual accountabilities where they discuss, make decisions, and perform real work together to make a changes in organization to be better. And the last one is value basis is humanistic, democratic, and developmental. So this value build upon humanity, psychology, and emphasize the importance of developing people in work organization and help them to achieve satisfaction. So I will explain more about humanistic value, democratic value, and development. For humanistic value, it is an approach to life based on reason and our common humanity. So for the democratic value, is the ideas or belief that make a society fair, including democratic decision making, freedom of speech. And the last one is development value. Development value ni dia ada three core values of development, which is sustenance, self-esteem, and freedom. So it is a process that creates growth, progress, positive change, or the addition at physical, economic, environmental, and society. Okay, the OD practitioner. The OD practitioner is normally refers to people who do organizational development. Organizational development practitioner are people who entrusted with the job to carry out the plan change process in the organization. It also helps to structure activities to help the organization members solve their own problems and learn to do that better. It involves a variety of steps such as problem identification, consultation with an OD practitioner, data gathering and problem diagnosis, feedback, joint problem diagnosis, joint action planning, change actions, and further data gathering. So I will explain one by one. So the first one is problem identification. It determines the cause of the problem by identifying, prioritizing, and selecting alternative for a solution and implementing a solution. The second one is consultation with an OD practitioner. This one can include sharing strategies to improve efficiency, drive revenue growth, and retain talented employees through development programs. The next one is data gathering and problem diagnosis, which means data analysis, organize and examine the information to make clear the underlying causes of an organizational problem, or to identify areas for future development by doing interviews, observation, and surveys. So the fourth one is feedback. Feedback is essentially a process wherein the manager and employees discuss possible ways to effectively work together to achieve organizational goals. The next one is joint problem diagnosis. So at this stage, the audit practitioner and organization member jointly agree on what the problem and its causes are, as gaps in communication during the data gathering stage could result in misdiagnosis. The next one is joint action planning. Joint action planning is the step preceded the actual action phase and involves the audit practitioner and the organization member jointly agreeing on the actions or interventions needed to bring about the desired change. The next one is change action. Change action is it involves a change in the company structure, strategy, policies, procedure, technology, or culture. And the last one is further data gathering. So further data gathering ni, once the data collection has been done, the outcome of change are determined and further action identified in order to solve the problem that may have assist in the organization. In coaching people through such change processes, Cumming and Worley argued that audit practitioners need a variety of skills, including 4 skills, which is intrapersonal skills, interpersonal skills, general consultation skills, and the last one is organization development theory. So, let's go one by one for the skills. So the first one is intrapersonal skills. Intrapersonal skills are the internal abilities and behaviors that help you manage emotion, cope with challenges, and learn new information, including the ability to retain their own health in high-stress organizational situations. The second one is interpersonal skills. Interpersonal skills are the behaviors and tactics a person used to interact with others effectively. It also refers to an employee's ability to work well with others. The next one is general consultation skill. General consultation skills are in order to accurately deduce an organization inefficiencies. General consultation skills must include basic investigative skills such as research, interview and evaluation skills, in addition to discernment and awareness. And the last one is organization development theory. So organization development theory is dedicated to expanding the working knowledge on individuals to enhance and to make more effective organizational performance and change. So organization development theory ni maksudnya dia macam kita memastikan the employee understand about their kepakaran yang perlu ada dalam bidang mereka. So last but not least, underpinning this audit practitioner intervention is the classic change process model developed by Kurt Levine. He also developed a 3-stage model of how change occurs, which is unfreezing. Unfreezing is how the organization operates. The second one is changing. Changing is the organization in specific ways. And the last one is rephrasing. Rephrasing is the changes into the operation of the organization.
Hi and Assalamualaikum. My name is Muhammad Rushaidi bin Abdul Rahman and my metric number is I18203136. And today I will present about criticism of organizational development. As application of audit as an approach to managing change became more widespread, so did attention to its limitation. Even advocates of audit approach began to acknowledge that there are problems in the field. French and Bell on 1995 identified 6 of these. The first is audit definitions and concept. It is hard to define or measure audit's effectiveness. The second is internal validity problems. It is difficult to determine whether change was initiated or reactive. The third is external validity problems. not sure that audit is appropriate for all organizational settings. The fourth is lack of theory. There are no real theory to prove or disprove. The fifth is problems with measuring attitude changes. It is difficult to measure attitude changes. And the last one is problems with normal science approach to research. It is difficult to make a research. Okay, we move on to current relevance of audit's traditional value. Warner Burg on 1997 argued that for many experienced audit practitioners, the profession has lost its way. Its values are no longer adequately honored, let alone practiced, and unwavering emphasis on the bottom line has taken over. This sentiment was a reaction to the growing role of some audit practitioners as advisors, corporate restructurings, mergers and takeovers, and so on, despite the lack of evidence of the values core to audit being central to such changes. Besides that, an editor of audit practitioner at that time, Dave Nichol, agreed with Burke's general assessment. Nichol concluded that audit practitioners must remind themselves of the dilemma they face in assisting both individual development and organizational performance, what he refers to as contradictory elements. And he also advised them to recover their modesty and offer informed speculation to clients rather than certainty. And he suggests a paradigm change in how organizations are treated and revived, creating room for corporations to be seen as social entities rather than just a profit-making institutions. Other organizational development writers have challenged managers to make their organizations more inclusive, which is multiple levels of involvement in decision making, to create mutual accountability, to reinforce interdependence, and to broaden notions of time and space. Alright, we move to our next topic, which is audits universal? Some proponents portray audit change ideals as universal, with cultural distinctions as acting as a veneer that covers the common fundamental human existence. For example, Blake on 2000 claimed that the classic managerial grid framework developed by Robert Blake and Jane Newton in the 1960s has been applied successfully in many different countries. For Blake, this framework was probably the first systematic, comprehensive approach to organizational change and had played a central role in the development of audit. Also, according to Blake in 2000, they contend that the grid upholds and extends core audit values by promoting greater candor, accountability, and trust in organizations. The outcomes: controlling, welcoming, status quo, indifferent, paternalist, opportunist, and tone, with the latter being favored because it represents a leadership style concerned with both results and people. However, some audit supporters, on the other hand, are more cautious about how much the audit strategy is applicable across cultural boundaries, such as Marshak on 1993 that believed that the concepts underlying Eastern, which is Confucian or Taoist, and the Western Levinian or Odi perspective on organizational change are radically different. Audit practitioners should be cautious of any assumptions they might have that audit methods are universally applicable, although Mervis on 2006 suggests that audit become more receptive to a pluralism of ideas by drawing from both Eastern and Western's mode of thinking. And according to the finding of Seven Nation Study, Fagenson, Elan on 2004, said, audit practitioners should be carefully consider aspects of national culture when proposing specific audit interventions.
My name is Nushakina binti Anwar, metric number I18203128. I will continue our presentation with my part, which is Appreciate Inquiry AI. The POS, Positive Organizational Scholarship, and also the Diagnostics versus Dialogic Organizational Development. So, firstly, we look up at the Appreciate Inquiry AI. So, before with the slide, Appreciate Inquiry AI is the base process for change and transformation developed by David Copperrider and his colleagues at Case Western Reserve University from 1980 until 1986. If we see the topic, Appreciate stands for the valuing, which is the act of recognizing the best in people for the world around us. The inquiry sentence is stand for the act of exploration and discovery, or it also stands for the something we to act to ask questions, to be open to seeing a new potential or new possibilities. So AI approach is to change, which to seek and identify what is currently working best, and to build on his knowledge to help develop and design what might be achieved in the future. So, Appreciate Inquiry AI approach is focusing on what is working. So, people must learn how to approach a problem from the positive side. So, actually, we grow in the direction of what we persistently focus on. So, when we're focusing on positive, it creates a long-lasting appreciation mindset. So, in easy word, actually, appreciation inquiry is the actual recognizing the best in a team, in the organization, or the community itself. So, this approach is using a question to uncover what is currently working in the organization. Alright, so on this slide, as you guys can see, the Appreciate Inquiry have a 4D cycle of 4 techniques, which is discovery, followed by the dream, followed by the design, and lastly, destiny. So, we look up one by one. So, firstly is discovery phase, which is appreciate the best of what is. In this stage, is an open conversation, which is to find what are already working. So, everyone in the organization is invited to participate. But that doesn't mean everyone will be volunteer. So actually in this stage is help to reconnect and acknowledge past successes, past strength, the great idea, and also the moment. So in this stage also we are looking for the need that can be applied in present and the future. So the interview analysis, it helps to understand and make sense of what is discovered of both an individual or collective level. So the interview approach is open, human, and inspiring. So it's using a dialogue, not as a survey. So it will be all make and create a safe space that is essential for people to speak loudly, candidly, and openly. So in this stage, people are focusing on finding, emphasizing, and illuminating any factors that have led to the best in a given situation. For the second stage is dream. Imagine what could be. Dream is this is because AI brings an interesting attention, which is we appreciate the past success. So we are encouraged to challenge the status quo. So the dream phases is actually leverage the past achievement and the strength to identify in the discover stage. So people dream where they want to see the organization in 1, 5, or more than that from now. The entire team can project what best for the company into their wishes, hopes, and aspirations. So in this dream stage, the team is visualize what they are desired in future stage. So the next stage is the design. Design is determine what should be, which is this phase is about collecting story. The dream one is about creativity, but in the design phase we want to bring the two of them together. So the entire organization will work on creating an idea scenario, which is the team focuses on identifying concrete and actionable idea. So they craft a provocative propositions and organizing principle in which the positive core, which is alive in their strategy, in their process, in their making decision, and also their collaboration. The last stage, which is destiny, creating what will be, which is in this stage, to make the dream come true, it requires a different approach, right? To be in traditional planning or monitoring, or also the implementation. But the power of AI lies itself is stepping back, which is we let the organization emerge on its own term. So leading change is more like a revolution than a structured and predefined map. So the concept of change as an open invitation itself goes well beyond people by sharing stories or providing ideas. So we let our employees to take over. So in this stage, we invite people to construct their future in freedom style and ownership that create a more significant commitment. The Positive Organizational Scholarship, POS. So as you guys can see, POS is an umbrella term that emerged in the early 2000s to encompass approaches such as AI and the others, including positive psychology and community psychology. Okay, that slide is means that POS seeks to understand what represent the best of the human condition based on the scholarly research and the theory. So same goes with the positive psychology, that is focuses on the exploring optimal individual psychological state rather than pathological one. So the organization scholarship is more focused on the generative dynamic in the organization that will be lead to the organizational development of human strength, the foster resiliency in employee, enabling holding and restoration, and also the cultivative extraordinary individual. So as you guys can refer the slide, POS, P positive, is focuses on emphasize, elevating, affirmative and generating state and dynamic. OE organizational, which is we focuses on investigating positive process and state that occur in association with organizational context. So every positive phenomena we examine, alright? So in S later, which is scholarship, it stands for focuses on pursuing rigorous systematic and theory based on the foundation for positive phenomena. Alright, so in this slide, as you guys can see, in this POS approach, there are 4 convergence, which is dia terdapat 4 nasihat, which is 4 sudut perspektif yang dipandang apabila menggunakan POS approach. So there are 4 convergence, which is firstly adopting a positive lens, which is dealing with celebrations, successes or adversity problems that it focus on life-giving elements. Okay, bila kita menggunakan POS approach, perspektif yang perlu kita gunakan adalah menggunakan lensa positif, which is kita menggunakan sudut pandangan yang berbeza. Kita menganggap satu cabaran atau rintangan, kita tafsirkan semula sebagai satu peluang dan juga pengalaman dalam membina kekuatan dan juga kelebihan, dan bukannya menganggap ia satu tragedi atau masalah. Sebab tu bila menggunakan POS approach, kita akan menafsir fenomena, kita akan menafsir sesuatu fenomena secara positif. In a second point, focusing on positively deviant performance, which is investigating outcomes that are well in excess of any normally expected performance, that is outcome that are spectacular, surprising and extraordinary, which is apabila kita menggunakan POS approach, ada perspektif yang kedua adalah kita menjangkakan hasil positif yang luar biasa. Walaupun kita menganggap satu cabaran dan rintangan tu macam the negative side kan, tapi kita memandangkan dia satu positif dan kita menganggap dia juga akan mendatangkan hasil yang luar biasa dan positif juga. Okay, yang ketiga, assuming an affirmative bias, which is involve holding the view that is positivity generates in individual, group and organisation the capacity for greater achievement. Yang ketiga ialah maksudnya ia mewakili bias affirmative yang akan memupuk akal. Bias affirmative, which is POS, bila kita menggunakan approach POS, kita menganggap satu argument atau satu tentangan itu sebagai sesuatu yang positif untuk membuka dan meningkatkan sumber daya pada individu, kumpulan, organisasi, sehingga akhirnya kita akan meningkatkan keupayaan dan memperkuatkan diri kita sendiri. Okay, lastly, examining virtualness, which is involved assuming that all human system are inclined toward the highest aspiration. Which is yang keempat, bila kita menggunakan POS approach, kita akan memastikan atau memeriksa tahap keadaan manusia yang terbaik. Sebab POS ini atau dalam poin keempat ni, ia didasarkan pada satu anggapan, iaitu anggapan Adamani. Anggapan yang menganggap terdapatnya kecenderungan dalam semua sistem manusia yang ingin mencapai satu arah aspirasi yang tertinggi. Alright, which is moral goodness, human beings and social betterment. Okay, tetapi di dalam POS juga terdapat tentangan atau terdapat satu isu dan argumen yang Feynman ulaskan, which is ada 4 poin. Pertama, whether we can really agree on which behaviour are positive. Maksudnya, Feynman ni mempersoalkan sama ada kita ni boleh ke betul-betul bersetuju mengenai tingkah laku mana yang positif. Ini kerana apa yang menjadi positif akan berbeza-beza dalam pelbagai persekitaran. Contohnya, kita ambil satu kes ini, whistleblower. Whistleblower ni adalah seorang yang membocorkan rahsia syarikat. Tetapi bagaimana pula jika whistleblower ini membocorkan rahsia syarikat yang melakukan kejahatan atau menganiaya customer. Tetapi di sudut organisasi akan memandang dia negatif sebab dia membocorkan rahsia organisasi, tapi kepada komuniti ataupun orang lain akan menganggap dia sebagai seorang yang berani. So di sini kita tak boleh nak menyetujui bahawa sesuatu perkara positifnya adalah betul-betul positif sebab dia akan berbeza mengikut persekitaran. Okey, kedua, whether the positive can be separated from the negative. Dekat sini Feynman mempersoalkan bahawa apakah positif ini dapat kita pisahkan dari negatif. Ini kerana kita boleh umpamakan negatif dan positif ni seperti duit shilling yang dikimpal bersama, ada kepala dan ekor kan, which is ada positif dan negatif yang datang bersama-sama, dia tak akan berpisah. Kita boleh jadikan contoh, bila kita bahagia, kita akan mempersoalkan adakah kebahagiaan ni akan berakhir, betul tak? So di situ ada negatifnya juga, tapi kita sedang bahagia, so positifnya juga. So another contoh juga ialah cinta. Cinta sesuatu yang positif, tapi kita boleh menjadi cemburu dan dia boleh menjadi sesuatu yang negatif. Ragu-ragu cinta boleh bercampur-campur dengan the negative side. So ini yang Feynman persoalkan. Okey, yang ketiga, to how what are regarded as positive behaviours and emotion differ not just in different cultural environment. Maksudnya bagaimana pula kita nak anggap positive behaviour ni bila di dalam sesuatu cultural environment. Macam kita anggap budaya sesuatu kaum atau budaya sesuatu agama itu berbeza. So dekat sini mungkin budaya untuk kaum A ini positif, tapi kaum B dia negatif. So macam mana kita nak konklusikan dia mana satu yang betul-betul positive behaviour. Okay, for the last point, yang keempat, there is an articulated dark side to positiveness. Maksudnya positif ni ada sisi gelapnya yang tak tersusun. Sebab apa Feynman kata macam ni? Macam kita cakap juga tadi lah, bila ada positif akan ada negatif. So dia akan jadi bercampur-campur. So dia akan mempunyai rekod yang bercampur-campur dan ada positif dan negatif. Okay, last slide, which is the difference between diagnostic versus dialogic organizational development. Okay, diagnostic versus dialogic organizational. Firstly, we look at the traditional, which is diagnostic audit. Begin with the diagnosis of the situation. Change comes from the identifying, planning and managing change in a systematic and free sequence. and the consultant role is as a neutral facilitator, which is who retains distance from this being affected. Alright, in this traditional diagnostic OD, this diagnosis OD was influenced by the classical science, modernist philosophy, positivism, and they're using a theological, which is explanation by reference to some purpose. Everything we do need a purpose, need the goal, need the function. Why you must to do? What is the function? Because it will lead to the final causality. So in diagnostic OD, they construct of change by collecting and applying valid data using an objective problem solving method that is lead to the change. So other than that, change also be created by plan and managed. In this traditional OD, they construct change by episodic, linear, and the goal oriented. So at the same time, they need a consultant role, but to make a preparation data and some facts. So in this diagnostic traditional OD, the focus of change is to emphasize on changing behaviors of what people do. Okay, next is we look at the dialogic OD, which is the first point, work with people in a way that creates a new awareness, knowledge, and any possibility, which is the dialogic OD itself was influenced by the interpretive approaches, which is the social constructionism, the critical and postmodern, the philosophy. In this dialogic OD, they dominate organization by construct with the meaning-making system. So the second point is engage with the stakeholder in ways that challenge existing norms, belief, and behavior. This is mean the dialogic OD, they construct of the change by using a dialectical. So they create a container and processes to produce a generative idea that will lead to the change, not episodic and the linear. So in this dialogic OD, change can be encouraged, but it may be self-organizing, and the change may be continuous and cyclical. So the dialogy also state that reality is socially constructed and can be negotiated and may involve power and political. So what I understand between the different dialogic and diagnostic. Diagnostic is the focus of change approach is to emphasize on changing the behavior and what people do. Behavior people, what people do. But the dialogic OD, the focus approach of change is to emphasize on changing mindset and what the people think, not what the people do. Okay, so that's all from me. I will pass the next slide to next presenter, Nur Shafinas binti Abdul Razak.
Hi, Assalamualaikum. My name is Nur Shafinas binti Abdul Razak, and group number I1820314. Today I will be continuing with my part sense making. But before I explain what are the definition, we go through the three change assumption. Drawing on the interpreted image of manager organization change, sense-making models provide an alternative approach to the OD school. Rick's point of departure is to argue against three common change assumptions. The first is the assumption of inertia. Under this assumption, planned intended change is necessary in order to describe the forces that contribute to a lack of change in an organization, so that there is a lag between environmental change and organization adaptation. He suggests that the central role given to inertia is misplaced and results from a focus on structure rather than a focus on a structuring flows and processes through which organization work occurs. Adopting the latter perspective lead one to see organization as being in an ongoing state of accomplishment and reaccomplishment. with organization routine constantly undergoing adjustment to better fit changing circumstances. A second assumption is that a standardizing change program is needed. However, that this assumption is of limited value since it failed to active what he regards as the fourth driver of organization change. These drivers are innovation, whereby people remain in motion and may experiment, example with job description. Second, direction, including being able to implement in novel ways directed strategies. Third, by paying attention and updating, such as updating knowledge of the environment and reviewing and rewriting organization requirements. And the last, respectful, candid interaction, which occur with people are encouraged to speak out and engage in dialogue, particularly when things are not work well. This driver emerge from a sense-making perspective that assume that change engage effort to make sense of events that don't fit together. And the last assumption is unfreezing. Most often association with current living, unfreezing, changing, refreezing, change formula. Unfreezing is based on the view that organizations suffer from inertia and need to be unfrozen. However, its change is continuous and emergent, then the system is already unfrozen. Further, effort at unfreezing could describe what is essentially a complex adaptive system that is already working. Now we go through the three best change sequence. If there is deemed to be ineffectiveness in the system, then his position is that the best change sequence is as follows. Freeze, to show what is occurring in the ways things are currently adapting. Rebalance, to remove blockage in the adaptive processor. And the last, unfreeze, in order to enable further emergent and improvisational changes to occur. In this view of organization change agents are those who are best able to identify how adaptive emergent change are currently occurring, many of which often are dismissed as noise in the system. Now I will explain what is the definition sense-making. Sense-making is a social process of meaning construction and reconstruction through which managers understand, interpret, and create sense for themselves and others of their changing organization context and surrounding. It also can make sense-making treat organization as being in an ongoing state of adjustment of changing circumstances rather than ever being frozen. And the last, we can definition it as sense-making reject the idea of change being able to be managed through a standardized change management programs. There are 8 features of sense-making. First, sense-making and identity construction. Second, social sense-making. Third, is a character of sense-making. Fourth, ongoing sense-making. Fifth, retrospection. Sixth, plausibility. Seventh, enactment. And the last, projective sense-making. In reviewing the sense-making framework, it is clear that it provides less a set of prescription for managers of change and more a set of understanding about how to proceed. It acknowledges the business of change and accept that competing voices mean that not all intended outcomes are likely to be achieved. However, critical to engaging this competing voice is the ability to shape and influence how they make sense of organization event. And the lastly for my part is managing change from a sense-making perspective. Change manager should try to provide a clear narrative that articulates that why and how of a proposed change. Humans are creatures who abhor a meaning vacuum. In the absence of clear communication, they will draw conclusion that is attribute meaning to fill a void. This is something that an organization should try to avoid at a time of change, as all sorts of misconstruction might take hold and make change more difficult to achieve. Third, there is no guarantee that change manager attempt at sense-keeping will be successful, as organizational members live in a world of multiple narratives, and regardless of authority structure, the interpretation being presented by a change manager need not have greater credibility than others' narrative. For example, some organizations are characterized by a very strong sense of identity, which can give the what we stand for, who we do think, and what we value at most moral quality that can make organization members very disciplined to switch narrative. And the last is manager, including those in change management roles, are creators of meaning. Whether they like it or not, they cannot choose to opt out of this role. Their only choice is how consumers explicitly to play it. Managers' actions have symbolic meaning and will be interpreted by others organization members in this way. That's all from me. Thank you.
Alright, we go to our literature review. Based on a book authored by Anna Everett and Jacob Hollenkreuz, there is an excerpt taken from Andrew in 2008. The excerpt reads, "Lack of knowledge and contextual ability to understand human response to change leads to leaders unable to deal with resistance and overcome obstacles." The point of the quote is that obstacles will be difficult to overcome if superiors do not have good or effective sense-making values. For example, football team A was unable to advance to the semi-finals for 3 consecutive seasons. This is because the football coach of Team A did not indicate the changes that Team A needs to make, and he thinks he will remain in this team. Next, Skatsky illustrates managers who struggles to explain the success of organization change in detailed and precise terms. As a result, it is extremely beneficial if sense-making is extended to the issue of transition to be implemented in the company. Alright, we go to our next literature review. Based on Jem Helmsmill's book, Making Sense in Organizational Change, he has taken a statement from Carl Wick explaining the importance of sense-making in change management. This is because sense-making is a collection of ideas that are capable of adapting and applicable in the workplace. Besides that, sense-making can be used to evaluate organizations. As a result, sense-making is critical to ensuring that an organizational transition goes efficiently and achieved. There are several current studies on sense-making in 3 sets of processes, namely the detection of cues, making meanings, and engaging in actions. It has been said, sense-making activities, in my view, can be successfully understood if all 3 sets of processes are carried out properly. Following that, Carl Wick emphasized understanding in the form of particulate in order to ensure that the sense-making understanding phase in organizational change runs smoothly. Okay, that's all from me. Thank you.
Our conclusion for this chapter is the change manager has an important influence on the way change occurs in the organizations itself. Other than that, this chapter is to explore the 4 images that assume that change manager have an active role in the initiation, support, and the outcome of the organizational change. This chapter also consider the foundational approaches associated with the coach and interpreter images, and also consider the foundational approaches associated with the director and navigator images. Before we ended our video, this is our reference from the book, the slide, and the literature review. That's all from us. Bye bye and Assalamualaikum.